People are very often surprised to find that I don't use a mouse. How can I click and drag? How can I position my cursor? Well, let me tell you why I don't use a mouse and why I think that you shouldn't use a mouse either. There are so many problems with mice. Let me begin with the very design of the mouse. First of all, it's flat, so it automatically puts you in a palms down position. That position with your elbow bent and the palms pronated or facing down on a flat surface that's horizontal is automatically a risk factor for repetitive strain injury. Just doing that. This position twists the tendons and muscles and it puts you in a compromised position. Various injuries can happen from the fingers, the wrist, the elbow and forearm, all the way up to the shoulder and neck from using the mouse. And I'm aware that they make a vertical mouse, which is supposed to be better, but there are also problems with that. And I've linked to that episode at the end of this episode if you want to learn what I think about vertical mice. But getting back to this mouse, it's flat. It puts you in a compromised position and you're only using one arm, the dominant arm. This is the same arm that you're using to press elevator buttons, to write with, to do any kind of skilled activity. You're probably using your dominant hand. What happens if you injure that hand? And then to top it all off, you're using the same digit to constantly click or scroll or something. And then people have all kinds of problems compounding because they're using one digit of one hand repeatedly, hundreds of thousands of times a day. So in addition to the poor design of the mouse, you're forcing, instead of being able to use more of your whole body, in other words, 10 fingers and 2 hands, you're forced to use the same hand over and over and over, and a single digit of that same hand, or maybe 2 digits of that same hand, repeatedly. And this is the hand that you have trained over your life. Usually most people aren't ambidextrous and haven't trained both hands equally. So think about what would happen if, let's say, you're a dentist or a fine artist or a musician, and you've trained this hand over and over and over to get it highly skilled to do a certain task, and then suddenly you can't use that hand anymore. What a lot of people do is, if this arm, the dominant arm, gets injured, is they'll switch and start using the mouse with the other hand. And because of the problems that I've just described, they'll injure that hand as well. So think about that. Then you have 2 limbs that have repetitive strain injury. Another problem with the mouse is that people have idiosyncratic habits that they use. They're not even conscious of doing this. But let's say you're on a deadline and you're not even aware of how hard you're gripping that mouse. But very often, if I try to move a mouse from someone when I'm doing a workstation evaluation, I can't take it away from them. They are gripping so tight that their knuckles are white. That amount of force going through those tendons and tissues, which may already be injured, is adding to the injury that's already happened or creating a whole new injury. There are other factors that can also compound this problem. Let's say you're working on a deadline, or let's say you're having an emotion such as anger, or you're feeling stressed out. So that's causing you to use the mouse in ways that are really not helpful. You'll see a lot of people, they'll be on a surface and they'll pick it up and sort of slap it down really hard, or they'll be sort of whacking and using more force than they need on one of the buttons or scroll device. The other problem is that a lot of people will ulnar deviate. It's a sideways movement that can give you major problems in your elbow, such as epicondylitis, if you're ulnar deviating all day instead of moving in a more holistic fashion from the shoulder, but then you might get a shoulder problem. So really, it just moves the injury up the upper extremity. The other thing that I see people do is lift up the mouse and pat it down. So they're sort of slapping the mouse, they'll lift it up and they'll slap it down. This is dorsiflexion when you're doing this movement. This can create a lot of problems for the median nerve. So if you don't want to get carpal tunnel syndrome, my advice is stay away from the mouse. In addition to the sort of unconscious habits that people might have, such as slamming the mouse or ulnar deviating or gripping the mouse or using too much pressure, another major cause of shoulder problems and neck problems is people put the mouse way up on their desk, way far away, so they have to reach for it. This is really not a good idea. Many people do not have keyboard trays, and you really need one so that you can keep your arm relaxed by your side and use the mouse down at the level where you're not reaching out to operate it. In addition to the problems that people have with unconscious stress, such as over gripping or ulnar deviating or slapping the mouse up and down, it can also be a problem because it's not accurate. It's not nearly as accurate as a keystroke, for instance. If you want to cut and paste, it's much easier to Control C, Control X, Control V. There's all kinds of shortcuts that computer programmers very often know, and they're far more accurate than using the mouse, because the mouse, it's kind of like ice skating. You have to sort of skate around and then find the perfect place to finally position your mouse, and that can really be. So when you have to keep repositioning the mouse, that leads to more strain and more overuse. Whereas if you'd used the keyboard, it would have been done accurately the first time. So people ask me, well, what do you use, Deborah? What do you use? And I don't like using the mouse or any other hand-operated input device if I can possibly avoid it. So I use a dictation program, and I speak the commands so that the program will respond where I want it to go. Now, if I absolutely have to use some sort of input device in order to position my cursor, I use a touchpad, but I have developed over the years a very special technique for using that touchpad so that I'm not overstraining one hand and I'm getting more accuracy. That I show people when I'm giving them one-on-one technique retraining. This is part of my workstation evaluation that I do with my clients, because it's not enough to position the equipment or to get good ergonomic equipment. That really doesn't do you much good if you're still slouching, if you still have poor technique. You can get yourself into plenty of trouble in a so-called state-of-the-art workstation. So when I'm working with people, I'm looking at how they're using their hands, using the tools that they use on a daily basis. And then I analyze what they're doing and show them how it relates to the various pains that they're having. You know, pain in the neck, pain in the elbow, pain in the wrist. And I show them techniques that help them use a more neutral posture when they're using their computer. So if you want more information about that, there's a link below. You can go onto my website and find out more about the technique retraining that I do with people. But in the meantime, what I recommend is avoid the mouse whenever you possibly can. And take care of your hands, because you can't use your other pair of hands to do what you love.